Peter Bleksley is standing by. Let's just remind ourselves of that clip of what the police actually said to Pete North when they arrested him for retweeting a meme. Yes, really. This is Britain 2025.
Basically, our hate crime team reviewed it and said there are offences there we need to explore.
Okay.
Basically, Section 19 refers to spreading what we say like racial hatred. So you've posted something online that we believe is spreading racial hatred.
Twitter, Facebook, what?
Can't explain too much. Obviously, if you've got stuff you'd like to gather, obviously I'm more than willing to talk through what you're able to take with you.
What, you're taking me away now?
Yes, so you're under arrest, so you're going to Harrogate, unfortunately.
You're taking me to Harrogate in the middle of the night over a tweet?
I am, unfortunately.
Well, Peter Bleksley is our crime commentator, former Metropolitan Police detective, author, speaker, king among men. Peter, what on earth is going on here?
First of all, I'd like to say how much I concur with every word that you spoke before the break.
Thank you.
Thank goodness for you. Thank goodness for this channel. This is yet another odious example of police overreach. This is not the police's job. In fact, if these officers had any knowledge of the law, and you look at very carefully what Pete North's meme contained, he's expressing his dislike of Hamas, of Palestine, and of the faith of Islam. Now, we don't have blasphemy laws in this country yet, albeit this pernicious, vindictive socialist government is looking to impose them upon us, I fear. Therefore, there was no need to go to his house. There was no need to arrest him. And I sincerely hope that Mr. North rinses the police for a lot of money and for their actions which were clearly unlawful and unnecessary.
Peter, it's interesting as well in regard to Hamas. The police officers who were interviewing him, he says, in the interview, didn't seem to know that Hamas was a proscribed organisation. I mean, surely if you just have a bit of a Google, you would find that out before you go around arresting people.
I'm afraid the standards of training and the knowledge of the law have tumbled a very, very long way from all those years ago when I joined the police, and you had to have a very thorough, in-depth knowledge of the law, even more so if you were a detective. Those days are sadly long behind us, because that kind of stuff has been regarded by the police, who are now basically a social service, regarded as unnecessary. And of course, they're paying the price. Police officers should know the law. And the team that reviewed that meme, that's the even more bizarre thing. They tasked those officers to go to Pete North's address because they felt there were offences there. There aren't. There are not offences there. And the mission creep by the British police into policing free speech is deeply, deeply worrying. It starts at the top. I'm sure that this went through a level of officers before those uniformed frontline cops were deployed. Mm-hmm. And because they're all terrified and won't make a decision, nobody grasped it, applied some common sense and said, nothing to see here, gentlemen. Go out and catch some criminals instead.
Speaking of common sense, I mean, at what point do you as a police officer simply say, you know, someone rings up, says, I'm offended by this. This is clearly horrible, dreadful, you know, possibly racist. I mean, I don't think it is racist, but, you know, if someone might think it's racist incorrectly, idea, this is something that's really offensive. I mean, I see things that are far more offensive than that on Twitter every single day. I'm not going to go around reporting them to the police, but even if I did, I would expect the policeman or woman on the other end of the phone to say, catch yourself on, sunshine, we've got better things to do.
Yes, and they would only be able to do that if they had a knowledge of the law and understood what is a crime and what isn't a crime. But clearly in this case, they blooming well didn't, which was very unfortunate for Mr. North. And I'm glad they're getting so much adverse publicity, although unfortunately we keep seeing more and more examples of this. The police have to start applying some common sense. They have to start using discretion, and they have to start knowing what the law is and acting accordingly. How many more times are they going to have to be sued before they wake up?
Do you think perhaps some of the police are waking up to this? We heard Sir Mark Rowley on the Graham Linehan case, the Father Ted creator case. He was saying the government needs to be much clearer in regard to what the law actually is. Is this just about ignorance of the law, or is it about implementing it incorrectly, do you think, Peter?
I thought Mark Rowley's words were appalling. He's the head of the Metropolitan Police, the largest police service in the country. He should get a grip. He should know the law. He should consult with the Met Police's solicitors. They need to get a grip on this. Simply washing their hands of it and passing it on to the government once again is absolving themselves of any responsibility. Get a grip, police officers. It really is not that difficult.
Great common sense there from Peter. Peter, imagine, for the sake of argument, someone wanted to sit in a theatre and hear more of your common sense. What advice would you give them if that were the case?
To go to peterbleksley.com and buy their tickets for my UK-wide tour, which is coming to you in 2026.
And whatever people think of Hamas, and of course a lot of people will oppose what Hamas stand for and what they've done, the point about this application is to say you don't have to support a prescribed organisation to think that it shouldn't be prescribed. If people want to read the arguments that the application is based on, they can go to the website.
Perhaps you could tell us why you don't think Hamas should be a prescribed organisation.
The documents have been uploaded to, so hamascase.com has all of the pleadings if people are interested to read those
perhaps you
arguments.
could summarise them for us now and tell us your belief why you don't think Hamas should be a prescribed organisation.
Well, it's not about my belief. I'm a lawyer instructed to make some legal arguments, which is what I've done, along with my colleagues. And it's not possible to understand the application without understanding the broader context. It's, as I've said, we're witnessing the collapse of an apartheid regime. And that means that extraordinary things will happen in those extraordinary circumstances. And that's why my client has taken this extraordinary step to approach the British Home Secretary and to say, look, there are a number of reasons why the Terrorism Act should no longer be applied to this organisation.
I think there are a number of people who will find it absolutely extraordinary that there is anyone who believes and anyone who would represent an organisation who is putting forward the argument legally that Hamas isn't a terrorist organisation and shouldn't be prescribed.
That's interesting. So you're saying that you think Hamas shouldn't be entitled to legal representation?
I'm saying that they're a terrorist organisation who have done absolutely horrendous things, and I don't want them anywhere near my country. I'm happy that they're prescribed. I'm happy that there's documented evidence of what they have done. And also, if you don't want to be a prescribed organisation, why not, I would say to Hamas, release the 59 hostages who are currently in Gaza?
So you're saying that people who take hostages should be prescribed organisations?
I'm saying that Hamas should be a prescribed organisation because it is taking hostages. I haven't mentioned anybody else or any other, or Israel or any other aspect of this. I'm talking about Hamas itself. I'm not talking about whataboutery. I'm talking about Hamas, which is a terrorist organisation that I think should be prescribed.
Well, look, okay, that's interesting. The point is that the definition of terrorism in the Terrorism Act 2000 is very broad. And basically almost any organisation that's using violence to commit a political purpose to advance a political purpose is caught by that definition, right? So the Ukrainian forces in their war against Russia, they would be caught by the definition. Israel, of course, would be caught by the definition. So what that means legally.
You've also said that the British Armed Forces would be covered by the definition. So it is the contention of your action that the British Armed Forces should be deemed a terrorist organisation. Is that correct?
No, you've misunderstood.
What I'm saying, it to me.
Yeah, I'm trying to. So this is my point, right? The definition of terrorism in the Act is extremely broad, and most organisations like the ones you just mentioned, the ones I was mentioning, are caught by it. And what that means is the Secretary of State has an extremely broad discretion to decide who she wants to add to that list. Of course, this organisation, the political wing of Hamas, was added to the list of prescribed organisations in 2021. The military wing was added more than 2 decades ago. And so because that discretion is so broad, what we're saying is that there are ways to legally challenge the exercise of the discretion in this case. And all we've done is to set out some entirely sensible, thoughtful, well-reasoned arguments about why the time has come for the Secretary of State to revisit the decision of her predecessor, Priti Patel, who was, of course, politically compromised and highly criticised for her dealings with the apartheid state of Israel, and to consider, of course, the position in international law, which confirms that people like Palestinians who are under occupation, I mean, this is a settled position in international law that people under occupation have a right to use armed force to resist. So Palestinians have a right to pick.
Am I getting it clear, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you believe that Hamas have a right to use armed force to represent their position?
You keep asking me what I believe, which again is it's not quite as blatant and disgusting as your previous question. But
what's interesting
it's not about what I believe.
Hamas said, well, I mean, you're representing these people and you've chosen to do so. So presumably it has something to do with what you believe.
Do you not understand how the legal system works?
Yes, I do, and I understand that you didn't have to take the case. If I were a lawyer and if someone came to me, I would say there's not in a million years would I represent Hamas. They are a disgusting, horrendous, anti-Semitic, dreadful terrorist organisation. That's what I would say. You didn't say that, and I'm very interested as to why.
Because you're trying to make the story about me instead of this important application because you're not a serious journalist, is that right?
The hour of judgment shall not come until the Muslims fight the Jews and kill them. So what the Jews hide behind trees and stones, and each tree and stone will say, O Muslim, O servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him, except for a specific tree, which is the tree of Jews. There is no solution for the Palestinian question except through jihad. That is what Hamas believe, and I would not represent an organisation that believed that, and you have chosen to.
Where's that quote from?
The first one is from the Hamas Charter Article 7, and the second one is from Hamas Charter Article 13.
Which year was that charter passed in?
I don't have it in front of me.
You don't know, do you? You're out of your depth, aren't you?
Out of my depth, right. Well, I'll tell you what Ismail Haniyeh said.
You're quoting a document from 1988, right? And it's clear that document has been widely criticised.
So Hamas doesn't want to kill Jews then? Hamas doesn't want to destroy the state of Israel? Is that what you're saying?
Let me just respond. So that document you're referring to is the 1988 Charter. I know you don't know what you're talking about, which is fine. You're allowed to be a bit out of your depth. There's 600 pages of supporting evidence in this application, and you've not had a chance to read it. I, of course, have worked on it extensively. So it's fair enough that there's an asymmetry here. Like, I'm not trying to trick you. It's just you're quoting a document that's more than 30 years out of date.
Well, let me tell you what was said in 2023 by Ismail Haniyeh. Let me tell you what the Hamas senior leader, Ismail Haniyeh, said on the loss of civilian life in Gaza.
Perhaps you're deliberately misleading your viewers. Have you read?
I don't think any of my viewers are under any misapprehension about what Hamas stands for. I don't think you're under any misapprehension.
You just misled them. You didn't tell them about the 2017 Charter. Why didn't you? Because you don't know what you're talking about.
On the 26th of October,
it's okay to admit that you're ignorant. That's fine.
On the 26th of October, the Hamas senior leader, Ismail Haniyeh, commenting on the loss of civilian life in Gaza, said, the blood of the women, children and elderly, we are the ones who need this blood, so it awakens within us the revolutionary spirit. We also have Ghazi Hamid on the 24th of October 2023 saying that he would repeat the 7th of October attacks time and again until Israel is annihilated. I don't see a huge difference between that and what was said in 1988, I must say. What
became of Ismail Haniyeh?
Well, we know what became of him because Israel assassinated him.
All right. All of these things are addressed extensively in the application. It's of course correct that Hamas should have to answer to things that they say and do, and they do extensively in the application. I encourage people to read it. It will cast light on the subject in a way that you're not even pretending to do. You're not trying to have a dialogue with me about what's actually happening. You're talking across me and trying to
how would you characterise what Hamas is doing if not terrorism? How would you characterise it?
Well, the whole point that's being made in the argument, in the application, is that the definition of terrorism is extremely broad. And so basically any organisation that thinks that their strategy is best advanced by the use of armed struggle will be caught by that definition. That's a central part of the whole application. Does that make sense?
It does make perfect sense to me, but what I would wonder is how you can argue that Hamas isn't a terrorist organisation if the definition is so broad.
Well, by that logic, Israel's a terrorist organisation. Do you agree?
No.
Well, think about it. Come on, man, think it through. If you agree the definition is very, very broad, then the Secretary of State could say, right, clearly it applies to Israel.
But you said it about Hamas.
They're doing a genocide.
But you're arguing the counter to this.
Violent. I'm going to say that the IDF is a terrorist organisation. She could do that if she wanted. She literally could. But why shouldn't she? They're doing a genocide.
Why shouldn't she? It's not a genocide. It is factually not a genocide.
Well, the South African government, the Irish government, the Spanish government, the Belgian government disagrees with you. Oh, you know better than them, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
they're wrong. They're wrong.
All right. Who asked you? What do you know? You obviously don't. You're out of your depth. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. I think that the phenomenal submissions that we saw in the South African genocide case are far more persuasive than any of the sort of ridiculous talking points that you're propagating here. It's okay, mate. You're allowed to not know what you're talking about, but why don't you just admit it to your viewers? You don't know what you're talking about. You're out of your depth. Everyone can see it.
Frank, thanks for your help. That's Franck Magennis there. He's a barrister at Garden Court Chambers. He's one of the lawyers behind the case that is arguing that Hamas are not terrorists and should be de-prescribed.
I've helped girls from very nice homes. They just got, the wrong thing. Very often it can be someone of their own age who approaches them, who plies them with drugs. You have the hook. Then you have the people that do the transport, and then you have the predators. Yes, so you've got the hook. Very often it's the same or similar age as the child targeted. Then they are put in the cars, the taxis, whatever. Maybe that person who was the hook has applied a bit of drugs into them, and then they go to somewhere where there is what is called a spare flat or house, and that's where the predators rape and give drugs and all that and pass them around like a tray of cakes. And those predators are usually 3 times older than the children that they're actually bringing in. Yeah, normally 3 times older, and it's just. It's just appalling. It's just appalling. I know a police officer, and I know he's listening in now to this. He retired, and he was sent on secondment. He was a detective, and he was sent on secondment, I think, up to Rochdale, I think it was, going back 20-odd years, 25 years. And he was disturbed. He actually went up there to look into burglaries by Pakistani men funding their nefarious activities, right? And he noticed these girls being spoken to by people, and he went back to the station, and he said, I've been very perturbed. I was out on patrol last night looking at, trying to chase burglaries and all of that, but I was very perturbed about seeing these young girls. And the police officer said, no, it's all done. It's all right, sir. It's all right. It's all been sorted. And about 2 weeks later, he was sent back to where he was. He's listening to this program now, and he still now loses sleep about what he saw. And as a detective, he was shut up, silenced by a man in uniform. Yeah. It comes from the top down.
Talking about the top, Marilyn, I want to talk a little bit about the politics of this. And actually, this has been prompted by the view of Mary from County Down, who's been in touch with me. He says, Peter, there was always going to be a national inquiry into the rape gangs and cover up by councils and police. Starmer knew that, but he didn't want to annoy his party, including councillors and former representatives who will be exposed for their inaction on this vile rape gang culture. Ordering the Casey report was a clever way of creating the conditions whereby he's left with no option but to announce an inquiry. He can't refuse, and the party will just have to lump it. I wonder what you think about that.
Well, I have got no time for Starmer whatsoever. None whatsoever. I worked with him on a thing to do with it was victims' rights, about the way people who have been raped and sexually abused as children, how they're treated by barristers in court. And we were all doing well with a white paper, and then along came Jeremy Corbyn, and off he vanished. We never saw him again. He's a flip-flop. He goes with the flow for as long as he can get away with it. But I'm not sorry, he likes Muslims, doesn't he? He's a Marxist. He likes Muslims. They have a mosque. The Labour Party actually fund. He wants the Muslim vote.
I don't know if that's true, Marilyn, but certainly there are many links. There are many Muslim MPs as well. There's nothing wrong with. I'm not being anti-Muslim, and there are many. Neither are you, Marilyn. Absolutely, you've made that point very, very clear. What is absolutely clear, though, is there is a culture within an aspect of that. There is a Pakistani culture, these rape gangs that have been predominantly Pakistani men who have done this. I just wonder if you have any faith, I suppose, in what Louise Casey will say this week. If she recommends a national inquiry, that national inquiry happens, will things change?
Well, it's going to have to be a deep one, isn't it? It's going to cost millions, and this is what they'll say, we don't have the money. Well, they have plenty of money to put up illegal migrants in hotels, don't they? And all the benefit system that they immediately lock into. We're going to take some money out of that and send them all back. I don't disagree with immigration if it's done properly. And these people come here, live by our laws. And, there was a mosque the other day, some imam, who was marrying off young girls to men, and it's not allowed in this country. Send him back.
Well, the authorities need to do so much more.
They need to do much. And also, Peter, the trouble is, this is a touch paper about to explode. You can feel it just under the surface. You go out, you talk to friends. There's this. It's simmering, and it's about to boil. And I so agree with Dominic Cummings and the other gentleman who was on earlier. You don't want this unrest, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen because people, we will only take so much. And, you know, when you see these young girls, I mean, these poor ladies now, what on earth must their lives be like?
Okay.
What on earth? How I mean, they're called survivors. Really?
Yeah.
Have they? Are they thriving with their lives now? Because surviving is just about breathing and living and eating and sort of like skimming along the bottom. Are they thriving in their lives? I bet the answer is no.
Well, there's so much more to discuss on this. No doubt we'll talk more. Marilyn, thank you, Marilyn.
Please do, because it's it's an embarrassment. I'm embarrassed to say I'm English, quite honestly. I've always loved England. I don't even recognise it anymore. And this is outrageous.
What everybody, of course, is talking about this this problem with the bill, but specifically the Chancellor as well. What's the latest you're hearing about why she was crying?
Yeah, I mean, Peter, you're right. I mean, it just completely overshadowed Prime Minister's question. It's pretty extraordinary to see a politician of any description, but a senior politician such as the Chancellor, literally in tears on the front bench. Now, as you know, there's all sorts of speculation. Had she resigned? Had she been sacked? I think there's probably been some market implications as well because of all this.
Yeah, we've seen the value of the pound against the dollar and the euro falling. Some confusion will do that. The cost of government bonds has gone up as well. I mean, this is not just a woman having a tough, or a person having a tough time. This is actually, there are very, very serious implications for it, no matter what the cause of it is.
Absolutely. Now, Number 10 came out afterwards and said she's going nowhere. She remains Chancellor. Her office put out a statement saying it was a personal matter. She's working in Downing Street this afternoon. Then we heard, there's rumours going around, I've heard it from very senior sources in Parliament, that there was an altercation between Rachel Reeves and the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, as apparently she was coming into the chamber.
Not a physical altercation, obviously.
No, a verbal altercation, I should say. Words were exchanged. Rachel Reeves apparently got upset. The accusation is that Lindsay Hoyle apologised. She then left the chamber in tears, came back in shortly afterwards with her sister, Ellie Reeves, who's the Labour Party chairman.
So Ellie Reeves, obviously also an MP and chairwoman of the Labour Party.
Yeah, exactly. She came in, they came in back in together, and Rachel Reeves took her seat beside the Prime Minister for PMQs, and we saw obviously that she was upset, tears rolling down her face quite clearly during that session. I put these accusations to Lindsay Hoyle's office, and they came back and just said no comment. Now, Arby then went back to them and said, well, I'm interpreting that as not a denial, and they haven't responded. So I think it seems to be pretty on the money.
Yeah, another political editor, Stephen Swinford of The Times, is tweeting that Hoyle is said to have pulled her up on her conduct during Treasury questions, which were yesterday, when he asked her to give shorter answers. Reeves is said to have rolled her eyes in response and said, right. She denied answering back and then started crying. Number 10 said earlier that she is going nowhere. This is an extraordinary day, an extraordinary number of days in Parliament. Where is Rachel Reeves now, do you think? Because we're in a situation where she will almost certainly have to put up taxes in the budget if she lasts that long, Kevin.
Well, absolutely. So, I mean, the context of this clearly is that she is under an awful lot of pressure, not least because last night Labour MPs basically blew a £5 billion hole in her budget. They forced Keir Starmer to back down on his welfare reforms. They were initially supposed to save by £5 billion. That's been banked by the Treasury. And now those reforms have completely fallen to bits, and that £5 billion is now back on the table, and she's going to have to find the money from somewhere else. And very clearly, Prime Minister, also Pat McFadden, the Chancellor Duchess of Lancaster, was out this morning not denying that taxes may well have to rise, and that would obviously be very politically difficult. So Rachel Reeves is under an awful lot of pressure politically, professionally. As Chancellor, it's a very difficult time at the moment for her, and it would appear that, as I say, something has happened between her and Lindsay Hoyle. 5
women who were exploited by grooming gangs in Rotherham. As children say, they were also abused by police officers in the town at the time. One alleges she was raped from the age of 12 by a serving South Yorkshire police officer in a marked police car. He would threaten to hand her back to the gang if she did not comply. Mike, horrendous detail coming out here. The people who were supposed to protect those girls allegedly doing quite the opposite of that, actually perpetrating these crimes. How does the police in any way begin to investigate themselves over this? Surely external police forces need to be brought in to take a good look at South Yorkshire Police.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Peter. It's an absolute disgrace. We've had the work. We thought it was bad enough when police officers were not investigating these things, when alleged community leaders could stop things, and we were told that not investigating grooming gangs was some kind of social cohesion. And now it's stepped even into even more worse ground. That three officers have been arrested, retired officers. And I agree with you, and I agree with Professor Jay, who did the report into Rotherham in 2014. There is no way on earth that South Yorkshire Police should be investigating this. The South Yorkshire Police say, oh, none of the officers on the operation now were connected to these retired officers. But that simply isn't good enough for the victims. The victims have to have absolute trust. Mm-hmm. Now, I had a small part helping the Hillsborough inquiry. The Hillsborough inquiry involved, it was against South Yorkshire Police, and 4 separate police forces helped to investigate that, not South Yorkshire Police. And I think it's time to bring in a separate police force or the National Crime Agency. There has to be, or they recruit retired officers, people who are completely independent of that police force. It cannot be allowed that South Yorkshire Police continue to investigate this. It's gone too far, in my view.
In terms of what these young women now are alleging, it is just absolutely horrendous. In a world where you were being abused so much, being raped once by a police officer was a lot easier than multiple rapes by the gang, and I think he knew that, this alleged victim has told the BBC. Written accounts, testimony from 25 other victims. I mean, there were at least 1,400 girls in Rotherham who were abused and raped by gangs of men, identified as victims being of mainly Pakistani heritage between 1997 and 2013. The J report, of course, concluded in 2014. The problem is this is still ongoing, isn't it? And even though a national inquiry has now reluctantly been agreed to by Keir Starmer, it is still going on today, and there will be corrupt people who were meant to protect these girls who are not protecting them. And that's what worries me, not just the historical aspect of it, how that was allowed to happen, but the fact that it's still happening now, Mike.
It's truly horrendous. Sometimes, Peter, I hold my head in my hands. I was really proud to be a police officer, in particular a Scotland Yard detective. And every time these things happen, I just think, what in God's name do people think of British policing? I mean, British policing used to be the envy of the world, and now we have this. And what we have is a political class who really don't want this to be. We saw with the Labour Party a 3-line whip to vote against an inquiry into this, and yes, we just need the absolute. We need to know what's happening, and we need to be assured, as the public, that this is being targeted now, that we can have no more of these cover-ups because people get accused of Islamophobia or whatever else to try and smokescreen these wicked and evil crimes which ruin lives.
Speaking of crimes which ruin lives, 2 men have been killed, 2 others in hospital after a stabbing at a business in Bermondsey in South London. We know that Met officers were called to a commercial address at about 1 o'clock on Monday. A man aged 58 died on the scene, another died later in hospital. A 3rd man detained in connection with the incident in hospital in a life-threatening condition. A 4th man also in his 30s in hospital. Very little reporting about this, and the fact that I just wonder why you think that is, and why you think that these kind of crimes are being neglected. Maybe because they're all too common these days and it doesn't feel like news to some people, even though there are, of course, devastating consequences for all those people and indeed their families.
Absolutely agree. It's become almost commonplace, hasn't it, these mass stabbings? And I think what really gets me, Peter, is that stabbings and knives, there used to be something of the night about them, didn't they? Jack the Ripper, foggy night. This is 1 o'clock on a Monday afternoon in a place where people are just going to work. Now, when I read into the incident, it was said that it was an isolated incident and these people were known to each other. So whether it was we can speculate, maybe it was a work dispute, but where does a work dispute end up in 2 people dead and 2 other people being brutally stabbed? But I think what this does is the fact that there's not much reporting on it, and there was a similar incident about 6 months ago in Croydon where a man stabbed 3 people in a factory there, that, as you've said, it's just too commonplace. It's almost like you've got to stab 10 or 12 people to get in the news.
Yes.
And everything. And tomorrow it'll all be forgotten. you know, there'll be another thing going on, another thing. And I just think all it does, though, is fuel people's fear. You know, not only are they not safe on the street, you know, they can't have a phone or wear anything on the street. They might be stolen, they might be attacked, they might be raped. Not only are you not safe in your home where people are burgling and hardly any of those are solved, now you're not even safe where you go to work.
Yeah.
And so I think it just adds to this feeling of the society or the state has lost control of the country.
Graham Linehan, rather like J.K. Rowling, and I have to say after a quick flick through his Twitter, like James, seems utterly obsessed with this issue. I mean, Graham Linehan has said himself previously, apparently to the Daily Mail, that he's lost his career, his wife and his friends over his views on this issue. Well, all I can say is that I hope he thinks it was worth it. I cannot for the life of me understand why people are so obsessed with people who just want to get on with their lives without harassment and persecution as their true selves.
Okay, I mean, we can debate that issue if you want, Matthew, but what I'd like to ask you is, should he have been arrested?
Well, his views were pretty repellent. And I mean, what I'd like to ask James, if I can.
No, you can't. We'll do that in a second. We'll do that in a second. Why should he have been arrested? Why was he inciting violence in your mind?
Well, I'm not a legal expert, but clearly the police felt.
But you're fine for him to be arrested. You're not a legal expert, but you're fine for him to be arrested because he disagrees with you.
Peter, mate, can I get a couple of words out? Is that okay?
Not stopping you.
Thank you. I'm not a legal expert, but the police clearly felt there was a reason to arrest Graham Linehan, and then I'm assuming that there will be some kind of legal process, or the whole thing will be dropped, or there'll be some kind of legal process, and it'll be then for others to decide whether there's reason to convict over hate speech or whatever it is.
They've arrested him on suspicion of inciting violence. How do you think he incited violence through those tweets?
Well, I guess it depends how you look at those tweets, but he certainly did mention you've just decided to read them out on air to give them another airing. And he said in one of those tweets, he made reference to kick a person in the privates. Did he not? You've just read it out. Did he not say that? Okay, so Queen Camilla did do that actually with her shoe. We know that happened a few years ago when she was sexually assaulted. Should she be arrested for actually doing the thing that Graham Linehan said that people should do? So now we're doing whataboutery. Okay,
no, it's not whataboutery. No, it's absolutely clearly linked. Graham Linehan is saying do it. Queen Camilla did it. You're saying he should be arrested. Should she be arrested?
Well, I gather that it was many, many, many years ago when she was a young girl, and I assume you don't believe in retrospective legal action, or maybe you do, Peter.
Retrospective legal action? Well, if someone murdered someone when I was, say, 30, hold on, let me get a word in edgeways. If someone murdered someone when I was 30, I'm now 41, yes, I would want them arrested. James Esses?
Well, of course.
Just a couple of points on that. I mean, you asked a fair question to Matthew, why should he be arrested? And Matthew's essentially said, well, because what Graham posted is, is unsavoury or despicable or whatever. I mean, are those the grounds for imprisoning people and arresting people in this country? Just on the gender stuff and the trans stuff, I am utterly obsessed with this issue. Indeed, Matthew, you're right. And why that is because I care about children not being mutilated and told that they've been born in the wrong body, women's rights being infringed and free speech being undermined. So I'm gladly and proudly obsessed with this issue. But going back to the topic at hand, here was a comedian making a serious point with a joke, as comedians are prone to do. Men are infiltrating women's spaces. That's why we required a Supreme Court judgment on the issue. Most of the men in women's spaces do have testicles. And that's just the fact of it. There was no incitement. And, words are not actions. Talking about punching someone has absolutely nothing in common with actually punching someone. We all say things we don't mean literally. It isn't a spectrum, it isn't a slippery slope. And when you criminalise incitement, what you do is you remove agency from individuals. You suggest that people are so impressionable that someone can make them do something over a post on X.
James, do you not believe anybody should be arrested for incitement? If I were to put on Twitter right now that I thought, for example, that people should go out and I don't know, firebomb paedophiles, that if I put that on Twitter that I shouldn't be arrested. I mean, that's clear incitement, is it not?
Well, for me, I practice a position of agency. If somebody reads Linehan's post and then goes and punches a man who identifies as a woman in female toilets, the responsibility lies 100% with the person who's done the punching and not with Linehan.
So if someone riles people up, James, I'm interested in this. If someone riles people up and says you should go out and sort out that situation, you should deal with those people, you should go and teach that person a lesson, and then that person goes and does that. I mean, you don't seem to accept the principle of incitement, which is against the law.
I know it's against the law at present, but I, as I said, believe that words are not actions.
So are you a free speech absolutist, would you say, James?
I wasn't originally, but I am now, because I've seen the way in which curtailment of free speech can be used by those in power to essentially shut down people, shut down views that they disagree with. I mean, that's part of the issue here, because it's also subjective. I mean, let's think about what we've seen recently. You consider Pride festivals recently. Well, I've seen a number of signs at recent Pride festivals saying punch a turf. No one's been arrested for that. A few years ago, Joe Brand made a joke about throwing acid at Nigel Farage. No arrest for that. And even our health secretary, Wes Streeting, a number of years back, posted online about pushing a Daily Mail columnist in front of a train.
You're a controversial barrister. I have been contacted today by a number of members of your profession who say that you, in their view, are not upholding the standards of your profession. What do you make of that?
I came here to talk about the genocide of Palestinians, which is happening as you and I are speaking, and which the company Elbit Systems UK Limited, which I was talking about in the tweet you referenced, that's a subsidiary of an Israeli company. It's a company that Palestine Action existed to attack and defeat, and it's an integral part of the Israeli government's apartheid regime, which, as I've said, is currently governed by fascists. I'm here to suggest that the ideology of Zionism is an inherently racist ideology, and it's a fascist one, and that the time has come for everyone to have the courage to do what Zara Sultana MP did and admit that anyone who embraced Zionism made a terrible mistake, that they were endorsing the logic of the mass murder of Palestinians because they're viewed as a racial threat to the demographic purity of Israel's apartheid state, and that we have to admit that the time has come for us to turn our back as the human family on that fascist ideology, to side unequivocally with the Palestinians as they liberate themselves from that apartheid state as a genocide.
Okay. So you're saying that we should side ourselves unequivocally with the Palestinians. Does that say that we should? Does that mean, in your view, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Frank, but does that mean, in your view, that we should side ourselves unequivocally with Hamas?
There is a distinction in international law between what's called jus ad bellum and jus in bello, right? The reason for the war and the conduct of the war. I think that what's absolutely clear is that Palestinians have a right to engage in armed struggle against an apartheid state while it tries to destroy them. I'm obviously not here to start falling into the traps you're trying to set regarding the Terrorism Act 2000.
They're not traps, they're perfectly ordinary questions.
Yeah, it's just that one side of this debate has to be very careful about what it says because it might commit a criminal offence, while the other one gets to go on a platform and spout genocide, denial and atrocity propaganda for months and faces no consequences, right? That's the imbalance that the British state that's participating in this genocide has deliberately created. And I'm inviting you to have some courage to challenge the British state instead of engaging in this continued anti-Palestinian racism. It's a genocide, mate. Like, seriously, like, how have you allowed yourself to become so numb to that? Have you lost all humanity? Like, seriously?
I would argue, Frank, well, you're asking me a question, I want to put it back to you. I would argue that to be a humanitarian, what you would do right now is say that what Hamas did on the 7th of October was a lack of humanity, was a horrible, evil act that should not have happened. I would also challenge you to say that any anti-Semitism that happens in this country, including some that you have been accused of by others, should be completely condemned.
You want to be very careful. It's not been shown that I've done anything anti-Semitic.
I haven't said that either. I have said that you've been accused of it.
It's as I've said. You are currently choosing to side with the British government while it commits a genocide. I'm inviting you to do something far more courageous, to admit that you made a mistake by embracing the fascist ideology of Zionism, to apologize to the people of Palestine, and to come out like Zara Sultana did as an anti-Zionist. It's beyond urgent. It's 22 months into a genocide, and you're still talking about October when it started, October 2023.
Do you not think we should talk about it? Do you think we should not talk about the 7th of October?
I think that the 7th of October is being used as atrocity propaganda, and I think that you are personally responsible for spending 22 months propagating atrocity propaganda. You are justifying a genocide, and you will be remembered as such.
I think you'll be remembered too, Frank. I think you'll be remembered very, very clearly.
Aviva, can you just talk us through the time on the 7th of October, what happened to you and to Keith?
Keith and I were sleeping, and there was the first alarm. We ran into our little shelter, and we didn't even close the door because we don't have time. We're very, very close to the border. So we hid ourselves, and we thought it's finished. And when we walked out of the room, out of the shelter, we saw through the window all the missiles that were going all over Israel, and the whistling, and our house was shaking, and it looked like the end of the world. We were back into our little shelter, and I remember looking at Keith and saying, it sounds like the end of the world. What's happening here? We didn't know what's happening because we were disconnected, and the girl that gave us the message what to do, when to do on the kibbutz, she was murdered very, very shortly after it started, and nobody took her job because everybody was trying to figure out what's happening and to keep alive. And
sounds chaotic and terrifying.
It was just the worst that anybody can ever think about. We knew that it's really, really big and large. We knew that there were terrorists on the kibbutz. We knew that people were killed, and we were very, very scared for our lives. Didn't know if they're going to burn us. And when we did step out of the window while we were pulled by the Hamas terrorists, we did see fires in some of the houses, so we knew that people were burnt. And I didn't know anything until I came back. And I just want to say that when I heard what happened in Israel, I was just so disgusted. And I could just say that the people that did what they did on the 7th were the people that took care of us, because they were brutal to us all the time. There wasn't a second that they were nice to us.
You were held hostage for 51 days. You saw some horrific things there. This interview will go out at a time when children might be listening, so we've got to be careful what we say. But just give us a flavour of what you saw and what you experienced.
Well, I was there. I'm a witness of one of the girls, a Hamas terrorist, did whatever he wanted to her. And I was very worried, and it was very difficult for me to see that because I really, really loved her already. We became like one big, huge family, and I couldn't even help her. The only thing that I could do is look at her in the eyes and try and comfort her after what she went through. I saw them torturing Keith and torturing one of the hostages. They beated her, and I saw too many things, felt so many things. I was starved, I was thirsty, I wasn't allowed to move. My back was caught and I was sore all the time. And to watch Keith suffering from his ribs that were broken and his sore that was on his hand, from them just shooting us on the way, was tremendous for me.
How much of the time that you were in captivity were the two of you together then? Was that all of the time or most of the time?
I was with Keith for the first 50 days. And then I had one day that I was without Keith that I didn't know what's going to happen to me, if they're going to rape me or touch me or kill me. And I didn't even know if I'll ever see Keith again or if I'll ever see my family.
Keith, you were there for 484 days, but you were told at one stage that you would be released alongside Aviva, but then you weren't. That must have been just so even more difficult than everything else that was together, psychological torture.
Yes, that's correct. I was also relieved that Aviva was going to be released. I was hoping that that was the case, and it was true. But it was a combination of relief and worrying about what Aviva would go through until she got home and not knowing if she had made it home, because they did not show that to us. They showed us her release on television, but the the television channel did not show any coverage of the hostages arriving in Israel, so I didn't know.
Hamas are terrorists. Anyone who's supporting them should be deeply ashamed of themselves. And again, this idea of a two-state solution, we're asking essentially for regime change. Who will take over that regime, Peter? It will be Hamas. These people are not good. Their views on women and homosexuals is disgusting. It's very worrying. And those on the far left, people like Dale Vince, should hang their heads in shame.
Zoe, you want there to be a Palestinian state. You want there to be a two-state solution. If there was a Palestinian state, would you hold elections?
I mean, that would be the inevitable next step.
What happens if Hamas win those elections?
I mean, look, it's up to the Palestinians to then decide who's their government.
So they could decide if Hamas are the governors of a Palestinian state. So what you're asking, and what many in the international community are asking for, is Israel to say, right, you give some level of independence to the Gaza Strip for 20 years, instead of building, a really good place and a really nice place to live. Instead, what they did was they attacked on the 7th of October and took a lot of that money to build a network of tunnels, which is bigger than the underground in London, then attacked. So what many people are saying, including you, to a degree, Zoe, and please tell me I'm wrong, is a Palestinian state which let's say it has the West Bank, let's say it has the Golan Heights, let's say it has East Jerusalem, let's say it has Gaza. It may not have all of those, but let's say it has some of those. And in theory, Hamas could be in control.
In theory, yes.
But what if they are?
But look, at the end of the day, we also know that the atrocities that happened on the 7th of October were, led by Hamas, and what has happened to Palestine since has been in consequence of that, as per Israel's actions. So I do think, the Palestinians may regard Hamas differently as a result now, but here we are where we are.
But we don't know that.
And Hamas themselves has said, had they known the response of Israel, they wouldn't have done what they said.
Oh, come on. I mean, that's absurd. That's absurd, Zoe. They're always going to retaliate.
They're always going to retaliate, but what I'm saying is that now the Palestinian people can see what happened as a result of Hamas's actions, the devastating attack on the 7th of October.
Where is the evidence?
They might then decide to choose differently.
Well, they might, but
that's their as a state. We don't interfere in other states' elections.
But we do. But we certainly interfere in terms of how other states are run. We've done that on numerous occasions. The point is, Zoe, that if you have a Palestinian state, and if people vote for Hamas, which you want them, which you...
No, don't put words in my mouth.
No, I'm not putting words in my mouth. Sorry, what I'm saying is you want there to be... apologies for that.
Yeah.
Oh, you want there to be elections, and that's fine.
Yes.
But the likelihood is that a body that is totally hostile to Israel, that may actually be a terrorist organisation in Hamas, may be part of that. Now, the international community says they don't want Hamas to be any part of that. But what if the Palestinian people do? What if they have the autonomy and do that?
Well, look, I can't speak for the Palestinian people. Obviously, as I say, in response to what has been happening in Palestine over the last months and years, they may take now a different view to what was taken previously, and I would hope that they did. So,
but we don't know that for sure, do we, Max?
We can't guarantee, of course, we can't guarantee any sort of election outcome.
Okay, we don't know that for sure, Max, do we?
But that's the problem with it. We talk about hypotheticals, granted, but if we know, for example, which I think you're right, Peter, it's likely that if we do have fair and free elections, they will vote in Hamas. These are beyond bad faith actors. They not only hate Israel, they hate the West.